She's an up and comer.
I'm an up and comer. Sorry, I'm a camera jar.
Senate will please come to order. Sorry for the delay. I need to briefly go over a few details of the President Pro Tem, who you will hear from a little bit later about why. Today's devotional exercise will be conducted by Reverend Tenzin of the Shaoshan Temple in East Calais. Welcome again.
On this sun-lit bright winter day, as even through these curtained windows here in the Senate chamber, we feel the energizing rays of the sun. May we use this energy for actions that are beneficial. On this sunlit, clear winter day, as the cloudless blue sky stretches from one horizon to the other, may we also experience that clarity of seeing what actions are helpful and skillful. On this sunlit, bright winter day, as the sun warms all without discrimination, buildings and humans, squirrels and trees, may we also be a positive presence for everyone and everything with whom we come in contact. On this sunlit, clear winter day, as we are here between sky above and earth beneath, our feet on the floor, grounded to the earth, standing or sitting, head upright. May we know the stability and centeredness of the earth balanced with the expansiveness of the sky. On this sunlit, bright winter day, may we enjoy each breath of this pure sunlit air, air providing nourishment for our bodies and minds. May it fuel actions that are skillful and actions that are of benefit. On this sunlit, bright, clear winter day in our beautiful state of Vermont. Jio san shi ishi fu shi san bu sa mo ko sa mo ko ho ja ho ro mi.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to inform the Senate about a couple of things before we begin. The first is that tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, the governor will be out of the state and I will be out of the state. That being the case, we've worked with the Senate Secretary and others to create a clear path for what we're doing over the next couple of days. So when we adjourn today, I will be adjourning until Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon, we'll have a token session that no one needs to attend, that will only advance bills, not do any work other than advancing bills. And then that session will be adjourned until Tuesday morning. So in effect, what we're doing is moving our work from today's session, the end, to Tuesday morning. And I want to make sure that I say H850, which is on the calendar today. We will be moving through all stages of passage in order to get that out as a very time-sensitive bill. So that's the general idea, Mr. President, and happy to answer questions, but it should become obvious as we move through the calendar how we're setting that up. Thank you very much.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, under Rule 31, we have a referral of H554, which will go to the Committee on Finance. We also have 10 gubernatorial appointments for reference. They will appear in the journal as to which respective committee they were each sent to. So committee clerks, be prepared for pieces of paper coming your way for your review. That brings us to the orders of the day. We are going to take up third reading of H849, the act relating to technical corrections for the 2024 legislative session. Third reading was ordered yesterday. Are there any amendments to be offered before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H849, an act relating to technical corrections for the 2024 legislative session.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H849. Senator from Chittenden Central.
And Mr. President, if we could pass over S199 at this time.
Without objection, the senator from Chittenden Central has asked that we postpone action, or excuse me, pass over S199 at this time. Just for clarity, that would not be being taken up at the token session on Friday, because no action will be taken on bills on Friday at the proposed token session, if I'm not mistaken. Senator from.
And Mr. President, if I might make a motion with regard to H850, I would move at this time that the Senate suspend its rules and take H850 off the notice calendar for immediate action.
I'm going to recognize your motion and not ask you to repeat it in just 1 second, which is that once we passed over S199, I need to declare that the orders of the day are complete. And now we will recognize the senator. I don't think you have to repeat it, but the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate action off the calendar for notice H850 for immediate consideration. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up for immediate consideration off the notice calendar H850. H850 was read for the first time and recommends that, I've got to look and see whether it's just favorable. It is. So the committees of jurisdiction took up H850 and recommended that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H850, an act relating to transitioning education financing to the new system for pupil weighting.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the Committee on Finance, Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be a little longer than I normally would because this bill is trying to solve confusion as to what was happening out there with property taxes and with school spending and why taxes were being capped and uncapped. If you remember, 2 years ago, a year ago, we passed S127, which put a new system of student weighting in place. And at that time, we knew that we had 5 or 6 schools that were going to lose a lot of taxing capacity and 5 or 6 that were going to gain that much. We knew that we needed to phase in, especially that negative impact. When the bill left the Senate, it had a phase in based on student count for phase out for the in for the winners and out for the losers. When the bill went to the other body, they were very concerned that the 2 pieces that seem to be moving are students to use English as a second language and lower income students. So the winners, the losers seem to be people who have fewer lower income students than they did back when we set the standards decades ago. It hasn't been touched, I think, since the 70s, but I could be wrong on that. But it's been decades. And the winners, the schools that were going to get more taxing capacity, were generally the schools that had a large influx of students that spoke English as a second language. The other body felt that they would like to give the schools that were winning their money right away. They have been providing the special services to these students for probably a decade. The number of students has been consistently going up, and they wanted to do that. So then they gave the money to them right away, or the taxing capacity. It's not a check, right? And for the schools that were losing, they said, all right, we will phase it in by capping your taxes to 5% increase to 5% a year for 5 years. Well, if you remember at that time, and the information that was available then, school spending was going up 3 to 4% a year. And so by capping it at 5, you said nobody was going to be impacted more than 1% on their tax rate in any 1 year. So we thought that worked. We didn't do anything until the December 1st letter came out. And I think we have to admit, we probably weren't as clear as we should have been, because then it became evident that there were many schools that said, in both bills, there is a tax board. If you went up to 10%, your spending went up 10%, you had to go get it approved. But if you stayed under 10%, and they interpreted as your taxes were capped at 5%, you had a 4.99%, you could go up, and there would be no retaliation, no impact on your residential taxpayers. What they seem to miss is that your second homes and your businesses would have picked up that difference. So when we got back here in January, we knew that that was not the interpretation. The thing that had changed the most is from the 3 to 4% of normal increase. This year, school spending is going up on average of 15%. And several schools, several in my district, are going up significantly more than that for a variety of reasons. But so a 5% cap when you've got 15% spending is bankruptcy. You can't cap your revenue at 5 and put your spending up around 15 and expect for the education fund to stay in business very long. So this is the correction that has come out of the House. The first section says its purpose is, this is the first step. And that's important because we have a problem. Once we fix this, which is just the misinterpretation of 127, once we fix this, we still have schools that are spending at an unprecedented rate, increasing spending, and it's unsustainable. If school budgets pass, there will be some severe consequences to people who can't afford those taxes, and it will set a new, much higher base. So we know we need to do further work. That's one. Section 2 repeals the sections of 127 that caused the problem. And then section 3 is a lot of verbiage, but it basically says that from now on, each school will look at basically how many students it's lost. It's your share of the equalized system rate, but you will, and this year, if you lost 10% of your students, you will get a 10-cent tax credit. So there should be no impact this year from doing that. That will be phased out over 5 years. So next year you lose 20%, the year after and the year after, but it will phase in any impacts of 127. And that is about it. So so you get a penny for each percent of student you have. It should cause there to be no impact on this year's tax rates. And we would like to get this passed as quickly as possible. So, oh, I know what I forgot. The second part of this says that we understand that by telling schools, this is not the way it is, you're going to need to go back and redo your budgets because you're not capped at 5 anymore. And we knew that would have an expense. So there's a $500,000 appropriation that goes to the Secretary of State's office to help schools cover the cost of printing, advertising, whatever they need to do to move up their date. That, I believe, is the bill. The vote in committee was 601, and we ask this body to concur.
Bill is then referred to Committee on Appropriations, which consider the same and recommends that the bill ought to pass. For the report of the Committee on Appropriations, Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Appropriations Committee took testimony from the reporter of the bill from Senate Finance. And there was a lot of discussion around the potential spending and impact on property tax payers. And so in recognition, as was mentioned, there is an appropriation. Some of this is yet to be determined. We also took testimony from the Secretary of State. Some schools may move forward and let the voters decide, and maybe the vote will be passed or maybe not. Some districts, in fact, have gone back and sort of scrubbed their proposed budget. And so based on what we know now, we are appropriating $500,000, which would go to the Secretary of State in this fiscal year for the purpose of offsetting the election costs if in fact school districts have to rewarn their vote on their school budget. So the vote in your Appropriations Committee to provide the funding that's really necessary to execute the potential impacts of this change was voted out of committee on a vote of 700. Thank you.
So the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to address two things. First of all, the Senate Government Operations Committee looked at Section 4 of the bill, which is, as the senator from Caledonia was just talking about, regarding the delaying of the budget vote on school district budgets and the procedures for doing so if districts want to rewarn their budget and vote at a later date or rewarn one article. They could still do one article on town meeting day and a second article later. So there are options, and then there's the funding, as the senator from the chair of appropriations just mentioned. The Government Operations Committee was supportive of this. We took testimony from the School Boards Association, the Secretary of State, and the School Boards Association, the Secretary of State about it. And I also just wanted to let you all know that there are some really good combined guidance that the Secretary of State, the School Boards Association, there's a third one that I'm forgetting now, that they did combined guidance on, Superintendent's Association, that's the one, on how school districts and clerks and municipalities should operationalize this delay in school district votes, which is posted on the Government Operations Committee website. And if any of you want that guidance, I can share it with you as well to share with your local municipalities because it's really helpful about the process. So just wanted all of you to know that the GovOps Committee took a look at this part of the bill. And thought it looked good. The second thing is 2 years ago, for those of you who were here in the chamber, I stood up right here for over an hour explaining how our school finance system works. In the pursuit of passage of Act 127, which is the topic of this bill. And at the time, as the senator, the chair of finance said, we had a 5-year phase-in of the pupil weighting system in the Senate version of the bill. And by golly, I wish we kept that, but but the most important thing is that one of the things that I said to senators at the time was that we didn't know exactly how it was gonna all play out. Because our school finance system is complex, and because it is interactive, meaning the decisions of one school district can impact the decisions of other school districts and impact the tax rates and the spending of other school districts. It's all interactive. And what we've seen right now is all of the school districts' budgets decisions interacting and sort of bubbling up to where we are now. What we also didn't know at the time was the inflationary effects that we are having right now, the high inflation that we've experienced last year and a little bit previously. And we didn't know about all of the challenges that school districts were going to continue to have even 2 years past the really solid COVID emergency. So I just wanted to say how supportive I am of this effort and how unfortunate it is, to say the least, that we're in this situation. But that I think that we're doing the right things still with making the changes to our school finance system. And as the chair of finance said, there's still so much work left to be done. But I hope that we will unanimously support this option to move forward at this point before town meeting day. And thank you, Mr. President.
Pending question is, shall the bill be read, excuse me, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's very few times I stand up and really don't know what to say. But other than something as school funding, when we're spending $2.2 billion in the state, $25,000 per student, it ought to be more precise. It ought to be more. The towns shouldn't be as confused as what they are. We should be. I just can't even believe that at this point in time, us as government have allowed this to be in the situation that we are. And I don't think that anybody's done it nefariously. I think that Act 127 was really well thought out, and I think a lot of people put a lot of time into it. And, as we stood here 2 years ago, and I believe unanimously voted to support it. It's just hard to comprehend how something as so much time that was put into it really kind of failed so miserably, and caused so much confusion, so that these towns are going above and beyond. School funding should raise every year between 3% and 7%. I mean, that's the way that it is. But to have these budgets go up, some as high as almost 40% is really just kind of unbelieving to me. And then we have to go home, and then we have to try to explain to everybody how we got to this problem, which I can't even do that. I can't go home and tell everybody what we did, what we didn't do, how we got to this problem. Why are we spending $2.2 billion and we don't even know why we're spending it or how we're spending it. And again, it's not to blame anybody. I mean, I don't think that anybody here, I mean, I sympathize with the chair of finance. All the chairs that have been doing this. I just think that we need to be better. We need to be better as government. We're going to spend the people's $2.2 billion, $25,000 per student. We ought to be able to have a plan how we're going to finance our students' education. And I hope that as we move forward and get past this, that's what we can get to, that we can go home, all of us, all 30 of us can go home, stand in front of our districts and say, yes, this is how it does. This is how we do this. And as of right now, because I can't do that, I'm a no on the bill. Thank you.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, I was reading the purpose of the bill. I found it interesting. It's the intent of the General Assembly to address the delivery, governance, and financing of Vermont's education system with the goal of transforming the educational system to ensure a high-quality education for all Vermont students, sustainable use of public resources, and appropriate support and expense from the Agency of Education or expertise. I'm curious, if I might inquire of the chair of the finance committee.
Senator from Washington is interrogated as a reporter of the bill.
President, I'm really curious about what is the next step here. I realize this is more like a Band-Aid to get us through this crisis. And I guess for the finance committee, it's 3 weeks from crossover. Other committees are 2 weeks. I haven't heard much moving. Maybe something going on in the other body. Could you fill us in on what we might expect as the next step?
Okay, I think as the next step, we're going to start looking at we had 3 superintendents in from districts that were going up quite a bit and ones that weren't. We're going to continue that. We're looking at, are there funds that could get us through this year? I think I'm very concerned about the impact on quality of life of people that we're going to have people that end up in tax sale because an 18–20% increase in taxes is, especially people living on fixed income, is more than they can do. And so we got hard numbers, but the income sensitivity, if spending rises 20%, they're gonna see an addition. And if their schools are amongst those voting above the average, it will hit them. So we have a very unique school system. It maintains our tradition of local control, and it does the Supreme Court mandate that we equalize all that spending. So schools vote, we collect all the money. If we need more, we raise taxes to raise it. We are the only state that has that kind of a diverse system. And I think we need to talk about the whole system of delivering, because it isn't the most efficient. And it definitely is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive way to deliver it. So I expect those talks will continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate that this is an initial step and not the final step. And hopefully hopefully we can deliver on that promise this year to do more and continue to deal with the impact, having been here when Act 60 was written. The conundrum really was a Supreme Court decision and how you equalize taxes around the state. And so that at that time we had rich town, poor towns, and now we have similar things going on. And I'm not exactly sure what the solution is, but I'm glad that we're going to continue to work towards a solution to make it fair for everybody and something that folks, Vermonters, can afford. There's no question that Vermonters can't afford some of the increases that are being discussed, whether they're income sensitized or not. It's still difficult. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is, to all of us, a bit of a history lesson. And if you think back to those who were in the chamber at that time and those who perhaps watched it from kindergarten then, back to somewhere in the late single digits, 2009, 2010, getting at that time, we created a Blue Ribbon Tax Commission. And that creation came as a result of the fact that we recognize that we have a tendency in this body and in the other to fool around with taxes and to make changes year after year after year after year. And every time we make a change, it doesn't just affect the taxes we change, it affects our whole revenue collection mechanism and schedule. And if you change the taxes for property taxes, it has an effect on consumption taxes, and it has another effect on income taxes. We then created a Blue Ribbon Tax Commission that recognized that and said, look, we're going to take all of these taxes, and when we revise it, we're going to figure out a way to make sure that they all work together and do what's intended in raising revenue. But unfortunately, what we did is we created a report from the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission in 2011, as I recall, that dealt with two of the taxes, because that's all they had time to do in the period they were working. So we dealt with income taxes and we dealt with consumption taxes. And we said, next year, we're gonna come back and we're gonna deal with the property taxes, which was the largest driver of education, dealing with education spending. That way we'll have it all together, because we know we have to do this all at the same time. Because if we deal with one tax alone and change and make adjustments to that, we know it's going to have an effect on the other taxes. And if we don't deal with all the taxes at once to get a system that actually makes sense, and we wait to do the fix for the next tax, the tax after that, the year after, the landscape will have changed, and this will continue. And there were some of us at the time who said, that's what we need to do. But we came back the next year and we didn't do it. We didn't deal with the education taxes, the property taxes, and now we're back again. We're going to make some changes because we have to now, in order to prevent tremendous harm to lots of Vermonters. But I want to make sure, and I ask the members of the body to think very carefully, that maybe we do something that we have to in the short term to prevent incredible harm to people. But that we also take a step back and we say, we've got to go after what the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission tried to do more than 10 years ago, and this time do it right and take a look at all the taxes in a logical way so that we have something not just that makes sense, but something that works. Right now, we have a tax system as far as education funding. I defy you, any one of you, to get up and truly explain it to the voters at town meeting day. Because when you have a tax system that is as convoluted, as difficult to understand as ours, that uses the coefficient of dispersion and terms like yield that have no meaning to most Vermonters, including, frankly, I think many of us. That's why the chair of government operations mentioned a few minutes ago that when she explained Act 127 2 years ago, it took her an hour to explain it on the floor. We have a system that Mo, Curly, and Larry can't figure out. And we need to make it simple. We need to make it so that every Vermonter can understand how we raise revenue for spending in a logical way. And a way that doesn't have an adverse impact on all of the other taxes and revenue sources that we have. We have to do this once and do it right. And I recommend and ask the body to think very carefully before we leave here this year to set up a mechanism to go and do what the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission tried valiantly to do more than 10 years ago. They made a great start. We didn't finish it. This time we need to finish it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a few remarks to say. I originally was actually against, when I first started the session, changing the rules of the game on this 5% cap. I saw it as too difficult for school boards who spent so much time at the local level over the past few months, really scrutinizing their budget and coming up with something, identifying the needs in their communities. And this change is really throwing a lot of chaos into our local school boards as they have to revamp those budgets. And so I was originally very much against it, but as changing the rules this year, but as I understood and increased my understanding of the scope of this problem and the spending increases that were before us and how that 5% cap was creating an untenable situation where school boards would have to cut almost 40% of their budget in order to only achieve a small percentage decrease in their taxes. There just wasn't a lot of pathways forward for these budgets to actually successfully be passed in town meeting day. So as the chair from finance so eloquently stated, this is restoring that linear relationship between spending and tax increases, because that's the other half of this equation. Understanding the education formula, funding formula in this state is impossible. It is impossible for most people. What I will say is that's the only half of this conversation. How we fund education is one piece, what we're spending the money on is the other. And that's where I also see us as having to spend more time on. But the fundamental challenge of Act 60 that I see it is we have centralized the education funding in the state with decentralized decision-making. We are leaving it to the school boards and the voters in each of the communities on March 5th to decide the spending levels. This legislature supports local control. We always see the value in the communities knowing what they need to spend their money on. So it is ultimately to the voters to look at these budgets to approve or not approve what's been put before them and whether or not that's worth being spent. We do have a lot of work to do on the education funding formula, additionally tweaking it. But the other half of this is I fully support advocating for greater clarity and transparency in how we're spending our money in our schools to get better metrics so that we can compare apples to apples across all of our districts and ensure that all of our kids have equal access to educational opportunity and not just taxpayer equity in our funding formula. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to add my comments to the discussion. Similar to the other comments from the senator from Bennington, one of the reasons I'm voting for this is that the purpose of the bill is to say this is initial step, and also from the senator from Franklin, there's a lot of work that needs to be done beyond this step, but I see the immediate need for this. Our district has a vast majority of the population looking at these high tax increases and also feeling that the school boards, as Senator from Southwest said, that these volunteers in our communities that put these budgets together really do feel like we pulled the rug out from underneath them. And I think we need to apologize for that. I think there was a mistake that we made. Basically, our mistake was we agreed with the House. So maybe that's a lesson there. That we had a mechanism that did take us there in a more thoughtful way. I think it wouldn't have the same impact. What we tried to do is have the immediate benefit of Act 127 for those towns that were underweighted for many years. We wanted to give them that benefit in year one, but we did not want to have all the costs in year one. So we tried to have it both ways. And I think that was the mistake we made. And I think we just need to live up to that mistake. But I think this is the best way forward for now. And so that we can have these votes and we can move forward on a different funding solutions in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to thank the other body for their work on this. It was expeditious, it was necessary. It got to us in very quick time. As senators know, our intention is to turn it around very quickly today. That is to address in part the mistake that my colleague from Washington pointed out. There was in Act 127, a piece that produced a perverse incentive to spend over 5%, but under 10%. And there were some communities that took that incentive because we had left the door open. So this corrects that. And I'm glad we're doing it before town meeting day. I'm glad we've given towns an additional chance to warn their budgets. And the reason for that is, as we've said many times in many ways today, and people can't hear it too much. Local spending decisions drive our budgets and drive our tax rates. Local budgets. That is a decision that this legislature has stood behind for decades. Local control, local budgeting. So when we did Act 46 and potential mergers and consolidations, all through that process, it was clear that no one wanted regional budgeting, no one wanted state budgeting. Everyone wanted to keep their budgeting authority in their districts. And so that is what we have. And as a result of that, if school districts make decisions that drive spending up, it is incumbent on us to provide a tax rate that will fund that. So I think that in one way, people should look to their school district, look to their school boards with this new opportunity and ask, if they think their tax rate is too high, why are we not rewarning a budget with a lower number? That's number one. But number two, to go to my colleague from Chittenden Southeast's comments, I completely agree. This is the first step. The second step is to think about cost containment. And I think that is something we have to approach in a much different way than we have since I've been here. I've been here about 14 years. I think this year we're going to need a discussion about how to reduce budgets and how to reduce those long-term costs in a way that is new and that is going to be groundbreaking. So that's my own personal belief. It's coming out of discussions that we're having every day. But clearly, if we're at 20, 25, 30% increases, even though much of that is inflationary pressure, we need to be looking at cost containment. And so I just want the body to know that my office is thinking along those lines. And I'm going to encourage, as my colleague from Franklin said, at the very least, thinking about the entire tax system, but also the education financing mechanisms that we currently use. So thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 850, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the body for that vote. At this time, I would ask the Senate to suspend its rules and move H 850 through all remaining stages of passage.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order that H 850 be moved through all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to place H 850 through all remaining stages of passage. We now have up for consideration H 850. Prior to third reading, are there any amendments to be offered from the floor? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 850, an act relating to transitioning education financing to the new system for pupil weighting.
Okay, you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? Senator from Washington.
Just a point of order. Did we vote on the amendment from appropriations?
To answer the point of order, there was no amendment from the Committee on Appropriations. It was incorporated within the House version of the bill.
Right, thank you.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed H 850. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would ask the Senate suspend its rules in order to message the results of our vote on H 850 to the governor forthwith.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved. Let me just check real quickly. Okay, we learn something new every day. Because it's a House bill, our suspension of the rules would be actually to message the bill to the House forthwith. And then a motion could be made without suspending the rules to actually directly move the bill to the governor forthwith. So it's going to be a two-motion scenario. So the first motion, which I'll just indicate you correctly stated, was that to suspend the rules in order to message the bill to the House forthwith. That is the vote we will be taking at this moment. And ventriloquisty is how I'm representing it from the senator from Chittenden Central without objection. So the question is, shall the Senate suspend its rules in order to message your action taken on the bill to the House forthwith? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. And you have suspended your rules in order to message your action to the House forthwith. Now, under Rule 15 of the joint rules, the senator from Chittenden Central could move for the Senate to message the bill to the governor. Excuse me, order the bill to be delivered to the governor forthwith. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Mr. President, with that said, I would move that the Senate suspend its rules in order to deliver the H 850 to the governor forthwith.
So close. We are not actually suspending our rules to do so. This is a joint rule. So it is simply a motion to deliver the bill to the governor forthwith.
As you said.
Exactly. Is that, if there needs to be any clarity, please let me know. If not, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate deliver the bill to the governor forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate has moved the bill be delivered to the governor forthwith. Are there any other announcements or motions? Nope, I already, we're out of the orders of the day, so we're good to go. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have two announcements. The first is, since we will be having a token session on Friday and then adjourning on Friday to Tuesday morning, that means all of our other work will be moved to Tuesday. Proposition 1 was voted out of the Judiciary Committee. I just wanted to let senators know that it is likely that Wednesday would be the day for a vote. We've had a request. We have a senator who has a funeral to attend on Tuesday. So we will likely take that up on Wednesday. And if I might have an additional announcement, Mr. President, the celebrated filmmaker Bess O'Brien has a film out called Just Getting By, subtitled Vermonters Struggling with Food and Housing Insecurity. There is a special legislative screening, which will be Thursday, tomorrow, at 4 p.m., 111 State Street, room 110. And again, that is Bess O'Brien's film, Just Getting By, about food insecurity in our state. I encourage everyone to attend if they can. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, you might have one other announcement or motion to make, I believe.
Oh, yes, I do, Mr. President. With that said, I would say pending announcements, the Senate stand in adjournment until 3 p.m. Friday, February 23rd.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Government Operations Committee will meet at 2 o'clock today. And then, given that we're not meeting tomorrow here, we will meet at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education will meet 15 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I get my exercise bouncing up. Senate Finance will meet 15 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet 15 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Are there any further announcements? Senator from Windsor.
You have tomorrow night's entertainment mapped out for you. And tonight we have, of course, Farmers Night, and we're celebrating 60 years of one of the iconic Vermont theater companies, the Bread and Puppet Theater. And Peter Schumann, who has done this work for so many years, is going to have a program called Paper Mache Mas. And it should fill the house with protest and celebration, as is his wont. I encourage you all, 7:30 for an hour, to be in the House chamber to celebrate 60 years of our wonderful Bread and Puppet Theater.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate now stand adjournment until Friday, February 23rd at 3 p.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned until Friday, February 23rd at 3 p.m.